Okay, let's jump straight in with the final homework, and that's the last three labours of Heracles. Right, first then, cattle of Geryon. So Geryon, this is the first time that Heracles goes beyond the Greek world over to the edge of the earth. So Eurystheus forces him to go and get the cattle of Geryon, and they were famous, these cattle, for their red hides, their red skin. So this is more of a multi-part job. The first thing he has to do is to defeat the herdsman Eurytion and his dog Orthrus, and they were quite strong and scary, but not for old Heracles, because he turns up and bashes them to death with his club and steals the cattle. However, another shepherd had snuck away and told Geryon what had happened, and so Geryon goes rushing after Heracles. And Geryon is not like a normal human being. He has 3 sets of heads, 3 sets of arms, and 3 sets of legs. So when we see this on the pot, and that I talked about in another podcast, you see it's quite hard to draw and put together. Anyway, so Heracles has to defeat all 3 of the bodies, and he uses his club and his bow to defeat Geryon. And then he takes the cattle back, and on his way back from Erythea, which is where they were, Heracles goes through southern Italy. And it's at this point that we get the link between Heracles and the Romans, which we will talk about at a later date. When he returns to Mycenae, Eurystheus sacrifices the bulls to Hera, and it's at this point that really he should have stopped his labours, but he can't, because he's got to do 2 more, because he was deemed to have cheated with the Lernaean Hydra, and he gained payment with the Augean stables. So he still has 2 more to go. And the next of these is the Apple of Hesperides, and this is a long-winded, difficult task where he has to go even further than the edge of the world. So the Garden of Hesperides was a place where golden apples grew, which Gaia, the earth god, had presented as a wedding gift to both Zeus and Hera. The apples were guarded by the Hesperides, and these were a group of nymphs who were the daughters of Atlas. Remember, Atlas being the Titan who holds up the earth, and he will feature in a moment. These nymphs were associated with the light of the world. Heracles had to collect golden apples from this garden, from these trees. And so his journey takes him from northern Africa to the Near East, then to Illyria. And at Illyria, that's where he fights that river god Achelous, who we will talk about later on when we talk about the Roman version of it. And finally, he comes to Mount Caucasus, where he meets the Titan Prometheus, and he has to find Prometheus in order to find out where the Garden of Hesperides actually is, because it's not on a map. No one knows where it is, and this is another reason why Eurystheus sets this task, so that he thinks that it just can't be completed. So he gets to Prometheus, and as we know, Prometheus has defied Zeus, and Zeus has had him chained to the mountain, where every day an eagle swoops down and pecks out poor Prometheus's liver, which grows back overnight, and the same thing happens the next day, because obviously he's immortal, so he can't be killed, and although he can feel pain in this instance. So the story goes, according to the textbook, that when Heracles arrived, he killed the eagle. However, other versions also have it that Heracles sets Prometheus free. And as a reward, Prometheus tells Heracles how to get these apples so he can complete the task. Heracles travels to Atlas, who's been holding up the skies, as he was a Titan who fought against the Olympians in the Battle of the Titans and the Olympians, which we see called the Titanomachy. And he says, yeah, sure, I'll pop up and get the apples for you if you could just hold the sky for me, Heracles. So Heracles offers to hold up the sky while Atlas goes off to get the apples. And we see here again the strength of Heracles, that he can complete this task that a Titan is doing. Atlas comes back with the apples, and being a top chap, offers to take the apples back for Heracles. But obviously this is a trick, because he's going to leave Heracles holding up the sky. Now Heracles is supposed to be not the brightest tool in the the sharpest tool in the box. But here he tricks Atlas and says, yeah, sure, that sounds great, but could you just hold the earth or hold the skies while I get some pillows to cushion my shoulders? And Atlas, being the dope that he is, goes, oh yeah, sure, I'll hold the skies while you get a pillow. And then Heracles, obviously, when he passes off the skies to Atlas, goes, sorry chum, you've been tricked. And he leaves and takes the apples back to King Eurystheus. However, because these apples were the property of Zeus, Heracles then had to take them back to Athena, who returned them to the garden, much like with the Golden Hind. So he's being respectful, but also not getting himself in Zeus's bad books, because it's bad enough that he's already got Hera trying to kill him at every opportunity. Okay, so final of the tasks is Kerberos, and if you thought going to find Atlas was hard enough, here Heracles has to actually go to the underworld in order to bring back Kerberos, the dog who guards the entrance. Now Kerberos, who is similar to Fluffy in the Harry Potter series, is a three-headed dog who is incredibly savage, large, dangerous, and also the property of Hades, who is brother of Zeus, guardian of the underworld, and not someone you want to upset. So part of this story is also told in Homer's Odyssey. When Odysseus goes down to the underworld, he meets the ghost of Heracles, who in book 11, who tells him that Eurystheus sent me down here to Hades to bring back the Hound of Hell, and under the gilding hands of Hermes and bright-eyed Athena, I did succeed in capturing him and leading him out of Hades' realm. So how he does that is that Heracles goes through Persephone, because Persephone has a lot of power over Hades. He loves her, she's his wife. And so what Heracles does is he sets up the Eleusinian Mysteries, which is a mystery cult that we talked about in the Homeric hymn to Demeter. And here is another version of it, of Heracles setting up this this cult, to Persephone. And this obviously makes her happy. So Persephone and Hades greet Heracles in the underworld. And remember that Heracles is, I suppose, his nephew. Step-nephew? Well, no. Anyway, they say that's absolutely fine, but you are not allowed to use any weapons in order to capture Kerberos. So it's the first time he has to, well, not the first time because of the Nemean lion, but he's not allowed to hurt the dog or the hound even. And so he uses the same technique that he's used on the other animals, where he wrestles them, puts them into a stranglehold, and subdues him. He then takes Kerberos to Eurystheus, and then has to return the dog back to hell, Hades, so that he can carry on guarding the underworld. Okay.